updates that are required and that sort of thing. And so a big important part, for example, this year we've had a lot of snow. People have worried about the integrity of their roofs, and that's part of the building code is they have certain snow loads depending on which part of the country you're in, certain wind loads, things of that nature, so that they can sustain the types of weather for different areas of the country.
So that brings it to the question of, do we have certain specifics here for our area that are different than other areas? Or?
Ours is a fairly routine area here. We don't, we do have higher winds, but certainly not like what you're subject to in hurricane areas. For example, down in Florida and along the Gulf Coast, you're going to have what's known as hurricane clips and that sort of thing on your roofs and things like that. But no, there's nothing out of the ordinary here. The high winds that we sustain are typical of many areas across the country, and so we don't get a lot of snow here. We're not subject to great frequency of earthquakes or things like that, and so typically the standard building codes are what are required here.
So we have staff members that basically work with the builders, and they go out and conduct these inspections during the whole process.
Yeah, so we have 4 building inspectors when we're at full staff, and again, with a typical single-family house, up to 15 different types of inspections, a dozen or more for commercial properties as well. So they're looking at things like the plumbing to make sure the plumbing's done appropriately, drywall or the sheetrock, the framing, in insulation inspection. I mean, that's important to make sure the proper amount of insulation is put in each of these homes. And then before any occupancy takes place, a builder or developer should have a final occupancy permit and final inspection done before occupancy is allowed from the general public.
Very good. The next division is planning, which basically sets the guidelines, I guess, for the building who do the inspectors. Tell me about planning and the importance of long-term planning.
Yeah, so planning and development division, it's to answer your question specifically, it's very important. The state of Washington is one of the fastest growing states in the country, and the Tri-Cities area is one of the fastest growing areas in the state of Washington. So we're moving right along here, and so it's important that we have the infrastructure in place to support all this population growth that is taking place. I mean, we're looking to make sure we have proper infrastructure as far as water and sewer goes, as far as parks go, and other amenities throughout the community. And it all starts with the planning division. When somebody wants to annex property into the city, we begin with the subdivision process, the zoning process, and and then that evolves into the building permits and things like that. But there's always standards that require certain acreage of parks, for example, for per population and that sort of thing. And we want to make sure we continue to invest in our community and have the infrastructure in place to make our city a very comfortable city and a city that everybody can enjoy living in.
And so basically, as part of the planning, we're making sure that building just doesn't haphazardly happen all over the place, which is the zoning aspect of it. How do we determine, what goes where as far as zoning goes? Yeah,
so there's a couple different ways there. The primary way is a comprehensive plan, which I like to describe as a should document. And as what I mean by that is a comprehensive plan. Once adopted, we should have commercial in these areas here. We should have residential in these areas here. And it's with the zoning that is incorporated after a comprehensive plan is adopted, that becomes what I call a shall document. Mm-hmm. That is then when the requirements are in place that this area shall be zoned and developed for residential purposes, and another area shall be zoned and developed for commercial purposes. And it's always important to not have certain uses, kind of like a library, for example. Mm-hmm. There's certain areas in a library where it's a quiet zone, and you shouldn't be boisterous and loud, and that's the same with zoning. There's certain areas where we shouldn't have industrial land right adjacent to residential uses, or even some commercial uses shouldn't be immediately adjacent to residential uses. And so that's done through the comprehensive plan process and then followed up by the zoning process. And all of this is done, especially at the comprehensive plan level, is done with public meetings, public hearings, and input from the entire community. And we actually went through our 10-year comprehensive plan review about a year and a half ago, and have a new one that was adopted by the council about a year and a half ago.
And so, for citizens' knowledge, then the planning of their city is with their input. Planning Commission is a volunteer committee. So, I guess that's just what I'm trying to ask is, who determines what zone is what? So it basically boils down to the citizens and the input of everything. This is what we want our city to look like, and this is what it's going to be.
Yeah, it all starts with the citizens and input from the citizens, and then it goes on through the Planning Commission and then on to the City Council for final adoption of not only the comprehensive plan, but also any zone changes that take place in our development codes.
So recently, I guess it's been a few years now, but the city changed over to a hearing examiner process for, I guess, zone changes and other what you call quasi-judicial things. Explain to me what the hearing examiner works and how that's been working for the city.
Yeah, so there's kind of three different areas, primary areas, that the hearing examiner works with. And the hearing examiner, rather than many communities having an advisory board review this is one individual that is not an employee of the city. Typically is someone who is an expert in land use law, perhaps is an attorney, and we have one hearing examiner that comes to our community once a month. And the three different areas that they primarily are involved with would be zone changes, subdivisions, and special use permits. And a zone change, for example, is where somebody wants to change their property from single-family zoning to maybe multifamily and allow them to put apartments in a neighborhood versus single-family homes. Subdivision is obvious. That would be subdividing the land for future houses. And then a special use permit would be something that may or may not be allowed in an area depending on the location of town, but might be best allowed if there's certain conditions like hours of operation or where a driveway or drive-through service should be located. Those are certain conditions that may be imposed on certain types of uses. So those are kind of the three areas, primary areas that the hearing examiner works with. And we have an excellent hearing examiner at the present time. He conducts public hearings in a very fair fashion. He allows citizen input, ample citizen input, and he's very fair, he's very courteous, and just does an outstanding job, while all at the same time making sure that we're complying with the standards that are in our zoning code.
You know, and we televise the hearing examiner meetings here on CityView, and that's one thing I've noticed about that. It may not be the most visually stunning meeting to watch, but the whole temper of the meeting is such that it's a very, very fair process. So what is the advantage of this hearing examiner as far as, you know, as far as when the final decisions are made?
Yeah, the big advantage is because this individual comes with a land use law background, they know exactly, and in our case, the gentleman that takes care of that for us, he knows exactly what laws need to be implemented and what decisions can be made without creating a bias or a decision that cannot be supported or backed up by law. And as a result, we've not been legally challenged on any of his decisions, to my knowledge, since we've implemented that program.
So it basically protects the city from...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in many cases, on some of the items he reviews, he's advisory to the city council, and then in certain instances, he is the final authority on those decisions that are made.
Good. So another division that you oversee is something that a lot of citizens may not be aware of as far as programs that we offer, but it's the housing division. And explain a little bit more to me about what the housing division does and some of the programs we offer.
Yeah, so there's kind of two different components to the housing division. The Community Development Block Grant Program, or many times it's referred to as the acronym CDBG. And that's when we're able to bring in federal funds from the Department of Housing and implement programs in our low to moderate income neighborhoods. And that can be, typically the areas you see are for park improvements, improvements in our parks, or it could also be for accessibility standards, for example, sidewalks or accessible ramps, even the pedestrian signals, pedestrian activated signals, the pedestrian activated crosswalks, things of that nature. In low to moderate income areas, we receive federal funding that can be utilized in these neighborhoods throughout the community. And so it's a great program. Sometimes people are concerned with utilizing federal funds like that. The thing you need to remember is that if we don't utilize our allotment in our community, somebody else will utilize that funding somewhere else. So we really should take advantage of those opportunities in our community and improve and enhance our community. So that's one component of the housing and grant programs that we administer. The other is through what's called the home program, and these are more for individual homeowners, for again low to moderate income families, where down payment assistance can be provided for first-time home buyers, and also funding available to do improvements in a home that might be older and needs some updating. Again, not cosmetic reasons, but for safety purposes to upgrade a home. And the best way to get knowledge of those funding opportunities is to come into our department and speak with the proper individuals in our department to help out with that. But the down payment assistance program is a very important one for homeowners, rental assistance, things of those natures. Also, with the Community Development Block Grant program, the one that I spoke of earlier, that's a very important program for certain events and things that take place in our community, such as Meals on Wheels. That helps fund that, and other programs, Elijah Homes, some of the efforts they do, to give you an example of where those funds are made available.
So I guess the best takeaway for that is these programs are there to help keep our property values up, eliminate community blight, the rental assistance and stuff like that, is so citizens have safe, decent places to live.
And occupy all the homes in the community, yes, with nice-looking properties.
So we have some rehabilitation programs as part of that, and I think that's important for our citizens to know about. And how do they go about finding out the information on the rehabilitation?
Yeah, so there's information on the website. If you get in and Google these types of programs, again, probably City of Richland Home Program, capital H, capital O, capital M, capital E, Home Program. Or just come down to the Development Services Building on Northgate, and we can help you out with those questions as well.
Okay, good. Last part division in your department is economic development. Talk a little bit about that and the importance of economic development for the growth of our city.
Yeah, and that's very important to any community, is that we have good economic growth throughout the community. That can be in the form of new homes and home building taking place, construction activities. It can be in the form of retail, which is one thing that most people kind of look at and see all the retail work that's going on throughout the community. But a big part of it is job creation, and that's a lot of the industrial land we have that the city owns on the north end of our community out in the Horn Rapids area. And that's an area of town that a lot of people don't drive out to unless you're employed out there, but that's a huge employment base, and that's a very important area for primary sector jobs, is that North Richland area where we employ thousands and thousands of people up there in our industrial lands, and that's an important component of economic development as well.
Is that unique for a city to own big chunks of land?
Yeah, in my experience, that's very, very unique. I'm sure there are a number of cities throughout the country that own property, but we own thousands of acres. The city of Richland does, and most of it's our industrial properties north of town, but we also own commercial and residential areas scattered throughout, vacant parcels. For example, the current site we're sitting on today, the current City Hall site, will be made available in the near future for economic development purposes, and we want something very nice and very creative coming downtown, and so this area will be looked at as a very fine economic development opportunity downtown.
And so you kind of see that cycle on planning, is say this is where we want to zone it, what we want to do, economic development, we have this available, let's bring this in, and all that. And all that is for, going back to when we have discussions about funding for the city, the three-legged stool and all that. So explain that a little bit more to me about, why is the city involved with trying to bring economic development? Because it is the funding sources, the tax purposes that we're able to benefit citizens.
Yeah, so we rely largely on property and sales tax, and so it's very important that we have development taking place and also retail sales. And it's important for all of the communities in the Tri-Cities area. Just because Kennewick might get a retailer that we would like to have had in Richland, that's good for the entire Tri-Cities, just as much as it is if we land a nice retail user here in Richland. It's great for all of the Tri-Cities, and we do work very, very well together. And so it just becomes more and more important for a community when we're trying to draw more activity, more development here in town. It's very important. Business retention is something that people don't think a lot of. But before new businesses will look at investing in a new community, they will actually look at the existing businesses and see how long they've been in a community. If there's frequent turnover, a lot of times they don't want to invest in that community because there's a level of uncertainty there. And so it's very important, not only do we cater to new businesses coming to town, but also through our business retention efforts, we keep those businesses for long periods of time in our community as well.
And that does lead me to my next question, which is the importance of keeping, small businesses, which usually is what we're talking about, active. So what do we offer as far as business retention? I know we have a couple of business districts and things of that nature. We do the small business programs. Explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, and maybe what you're referring to there, Small Business Saturday, is something we help out with, which is the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and trying to assist particularly the Uptown and the Parkway district, which are our two business improvement districts. We all know the Parkway and the Uptown have been with this community since day one, and they're very, very important for our community. It's just fun to come and shop in these places. We all know what it's like to go to the mall, but it's fun to come and shop at the Parkway and the Uptown as well.
We have much better food at the Parkway than the mall.
Food and unique businesses, and it's just an enjoyable atmosphere. And some of the programs that are available through the Economic Development Department can enhance those areas. For example, each year for the past many, many years, the Uptown has been sponsoring a chalk art event. And through business license funding that we receive, tax funding that we receive from in the city, we're able to enhance that opportunity. Same with the murals that have been painted in the Uptown area. And there's all sorts of programs available for facade improvements. If a business wants to spruce up the entrance or the facade of their property, there's funding available to assist with those things there. And so there's a number of important programs available. And we like to focus on our downtown areas. We want to really build up our central business district, the area near the river. We want to bring people to the downtown area, draw them to the river. And so we really want to enhance the businesses that are located in the downtown areas, the older areas, the areas that do need a little bit more assistance than some of the newer shopping centers.
Let's talk about some of the areas and what we're doing as a city to focus on that. You talked downtown, the Swift Corridor is what we're referring to. Tell me about what's happening in the Swift Corridor. You touched on the fact that the old City Hall will be repurposed, but tell me about Swift Corridor and some of the plans.
Yeah, so we have, Cadillac, for example, invested millions and millions of dollars a few years ago to add on to their building over there and improve that site there. And so they're kind of an anchor on the west side of the Swift Corridor, and the anchor on the other end would be this site here, the current City Hall site, the fire station, that area there. But in between, we're building the new City Hall building. We've had Columbia Basin College invest in this Swift Corridor area, and we want to make this just a very walkable area. I was amazed. One day I decided to go out and walk all the way from Cadillac to the river, and it took only about 10 minutes to walk that distance. And so we want people that work in these employment areas downtown and the medical areas to realize that, hey, there's a river not too far from here. And on the way, there's going to be some nice eateries, perhaps to eat at, or areas to stop at. And we want to be able to connect so that there's a fluid connection, so to speak, so that people can walk from A to B and find themselves along the river and just have an enjoyable experience. And part of that will be improving the Swift Corridor. We're going to add some bike lanes to Swift Corridor, some trees to enhance that area. And also we're looking at ways in the future to perhaps slow down the traffic on George Washington Way so that we can allow pedestrians a better opportunity of crossing George Washington to gain access to the river.
So all of that to keep our downtown, vibrant, rather than some communities where they just head out and then the downtown just dies.
Yeah, we want to keep a very high level of vibrancy in our downtown area.
Columbia Point, you talked about the river. That's pretty much, and it's amazing because when I've been here with the city now for 20 years, Columbia Point had just barely started 20 years ago. Now look at it. And there's only a couple pieces of property left to develop. Explain that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't understand that Columbia Point, which is the area down where Anthony's is located, the Courtyard by Marriott, that's the area of town we're talking about, the area including the Winco Shopping Center. There, the majority of that property was owned by the city and has been sold for commercial development and also residential development. And we only have a few parcels left that are vacant down there, and we are continuing to work with developers to develop those vacant properties to, again, make that a nice experience for families and those. We have an outstanding bike trail along the Columbia River that stretches all the way from Columbia Point, even Columbia Point South, all the way north up to Leslie Groves Park, and it's just a great opportunity to get out with the family and enjoy our beautiful weather. And we want areas where along the way that people can stop and eat at a restaurant perhaps, or get an ice cream cone and enjoy those sorts of opportunities as well. And so we're continuing to build on that theme for Columbia Point, and you'll continue to see improvements take place in that area.
Farther north, you talked about it a little bit earlier, the DOE released a huge amount of land to Richland and to the Port of Benton for development. What do we want to see happen out there?
Yeah, so this is the area way up north, north of Horn Rapids Road. I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, from the Department of Energy, the community received about 1,600 acres from the Department of Energy. 300 acres went to Energy Northwest, and then the remainder was split roughly in half between the Port of Benton, which is one of our economic development partners, and the other half went to the city of Richland. Areas south of Horn Rapids, we're marketing that for smaller developments, 1 acre lots, 5 acre lots, that sort of thing. But this recently acquired Department of Energy land, we want that to be reserved for users that need large lots. And when we say we don't have a definitive number there, but we're looking, somebody that needs 150 acres, 200 acres at a time for their use. We don't want to carve this up into a bunch of small 20s or 50 acre parcels. And of course, we don't have the infrastructure in place yet. We're in the midst of planning that, but these are going to be large users that will bring perhaps hundreds and hundreds of employees to the region, and that's what we're looking and how we're looking at marketing that newly acquired Department of Energy land. That
family wage job that they talk about all the time.
Yeah, and that's an important thing, as Hanford kind of ebbs and flows with the funding that's available out there for cleanup efforts. We want to continue to sustain ourselves and maintain the area for employment.
And then finally, let's look across the other side of the Yakima River at South Richland and even out there in Badger Mountain. What's the goal in those areas?
Yeah, so Badger Mountain South, way out south by Interstate 82, that continues to grow real rapidly out there. If you haven't been out there for 6 months even, or 12 months, drive out there and take a look. There's dozens and dozens of new homes, and that's way on the south end of our community. Also down in South Richland, the Department of Natural Resources owns about 350 acres that's currently an orchard just west of Target, and they will be selling that here in the near future. And that has been master planned, again, through our comprehensive plan efforts to be a mixture of single and multifamily housing and commercial, with also a school site identified out in that area there. So those are some of the areas you'll see over the next few years continue to grow in the South Richland area.
But all this has been master planned out and through the comprehensive plan and all that. So, I mean, there's a, I don't know if this is the right thing, but there's a method to the madness, so to speak.
Yeah, and in the state of Washington, it all starts with the growth boundary that we have, and that is where urban-like growth needs to be contained within a certain boundary. And so I know, some folks get a little concerned that the vacant lot next door to them, or the 5 acres that's been open space for years and years, is now being developed. But that is where development should be taking place, is in this urban core, in this urban growth boundary. And so all of these areas we've spoken about today are in the urban growth boundary, and we are really discouraged in the state of Washington from developing outside the urban growth boundary. And so that's what we're doing, is trying to contain that growth to the area within the urban growth boundary, and that's exactly what we're doing here in the city of Richland.
And then finally, what would you like citizens to know about your Development Services Department?
Yeah, it's great working with the department that works with the development community, because this is just an outstanding area of the state of Washington to live in. We have very, very low crime rates. We have great parks. We have great weather. The employment base is outstanding here, and that's why you're seeing such an influx of people wanting to live in the Tri-Cities or wanting to live in Richland. It's just a great area to be. It's a great community to be a part of, and I enjoy working with the citizens of our community in moving the city of Richland forward in the future.
Perfect way to end this program. So I would like to thank Kerwin Jensen for being on this program and talking to us about development services. And if you have any questions, probably the best place to start is from the city's website. I want to thank you for watching this edition of City Corner, and we'll see you next time.
You're watching CityView TV, your Richland community connection.
What do you love most about your city? Good parks, safe streets, clean water? Ever wonder who pays for those services? Well, it's all of us. That's right. We're the taxpayers, and we pay for those services when you live or shop in a city. These same taxes also go to your schools, the county, the state. In fact, your city only gets a small portion of the property and sales tax collected within its limits. City revenues go to the operating budget, where the council funds things like police and fire, parks and recreation, planning, streets and sidewalks. These services aren't cheap. Police and fire alone can take up half the city budget. What about the city utility systems like water and sewer? Who pays for that? Customers. Their money goes to that service, and it can't be used for anything else, like a new park that residents want. And in case you were thinking that the state and federal government pays for some of those services, well, there's not much money there. Their support of cities has dwindled. Overall, city revenues may increase in strong economic times, but they also decrease when things aren't so good. During the downturn, cities work to minimize impacts on the public, but that creates challenges even when the economy recovers, and especially when population grows. Cities are also working to enhance the services residents want, like faster public safety response time, reduced traffic, and better parks. This poses a budget problem today and into the future. Vibrant cities need reliable and stable revenue. We all need to work together to ensure that we can fund the many things we love about our cities.
water treatment's often a science and an art. My name is Bill Riley. I'm one of the owners of William H. Riley & Company, based in Portland, Oregon. We're the manufacturer's representative for Myox in the Pacific Northwest, and we're just really excited to be working with the City of Richland on their upgrade to the Myox system. They wanted to get away from chlorine gas, and they evaluated a number of different ways to go, and in the end selected on-site generation of hypochlorite and mixed oxidants. The City of Richland's water source is the Columbia River, and it's a very high-quality water, which can be difficult to treat at times. The simplicity and the reliability of the Myox system has really dovetailed into how they operate those plants. The operators that operate and maintain the system at Richland are doing a fantastic job.
I am Pat Abraham. I am the water manager for the City of Richland. We follow the regulations of both the federal and the state laws that require clean, safe water for our citizens. Part of the requirements of our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Permit is that we have to chlorinate prior to being discharged back to the Columbia River. But it's huge that we are a good steward to our community and that we're putting back good, clean water that's going to be reused downstream from where we are.
My name is Dave Trotter. I'm a plant operator on the Richland water team. Our source water is straight out of the Columbia River, and we treat it down to under 0.1 NTU for turbidity. The City of Richland's water system is fairly complex and very spread out. The operations team drives on average 80 to 100 miles a day, checking pump stations, taking samples. We have 18 reservoirs and 8 pump stations, and we sample about 28 locations for water quality. We have on-site generators that generate the sodium hypochlorite. It's controlled by our SCADA. They run 2 at a time, and they run in series in rotation. The system is really automated. It comes on demand based on tank levels. Table salt mixed with soft water is electrolyzed. The Myox produces 0.4% sodium hypochlorite, which is very safe to handle. As an operator, the operational safety factor is very important to me. The high risks and hazards of working with chlorine gas have really been eliminated with on-site generators, not to mention the city mitigating that risk to the community.
Hi, my name is Mike Coleman. I work for the City of Richland. I'm the wastewater treatment plant mechanic. Everything that goes down your drain ends up at the wastewater treatment plant. My main goal is to try to keep the plant running as effectively and as efficiently as possible. Before we had the Myox, we had 1-ton chlorine gas containers. Every 2 years, you'd have to tear equipment down to rebuild it because of how caustic the gas was. The same building we had the ton containers in, that's where we've put the new on-site generators. They take up a smaller footprint. They're very user-friendly. They save us a lot of time. We have 2 5,100-gallon bulk storage tanks that we fill every day. We inject that in our effluent structure, and we try to achieve and maintain a 0.35%. We really don't have any odor control now. It's pretty well balanced. It smells like you're playing in a pool.
Today we're finding a more stable residual throughout the whole system that's not requiring as much effort to maintain. We have programs designed so that we can move that water and maintain that fresh chlorine residual. The on-site generation has helped us be able to dial that feed rate in. Since we've gone to on-site generation, we're a much safer organization, and we feel a much higher comfort level in what we're providing to our citizens, the safety and the impact on our environment.
The City of Richland strives to make information about your municipal government accessible. Most information you seek is available from the city's website. This includes parks and recreation-related activities. To start, go to the city's website and click on Departments, then Parks and Recreation, or go directly to the parks pages at richlandparksandrec.com. From this page, click on E-Activity Guide. The guide is browser-based, no plugins or special software is required. Here you can find out about the latest class or event, read about parks projects, or check out the amenities that each of our parks offers. With the click of a mouse, you can get information about a specific class or sign up for activities. Simply click on the activity and add the class or event to your shopping cart. You will need to log in to your account prior to registering. If you do not have a login ID or account PIN number, call 942-7529 to get your free account, or email parksrec@ci.richland.wa.us with your name, address, cell phone, gender, and birth date. Because the e-activity guide is interactive, you can also find links to a variety of groups and organizations that provide added recreational opportunities, or a link to Parks and Recreation's Twitter or Facebook pages. Additional information about Richland Parks and Recreation is available from the Parks pages at richlandparksandrec.com.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Explore Richland. I'm your host, Mark Ingham. Now, when we came up with the idea for this program, this is the type of exploring I had in mind. Out in nature, on the water, enjoying one of the beautiful amenities that make Richland such a great place to live. Now, in many cases, these amenities are not here by accident. It takes the hard work of dedicated volunteers, and that's certainly the case with the Taptil Water Trail. Now, I'm pleased to talk to one of those volunteers. Dirk Peterson is the Vice President of the Taptil Greenway Association. Dirk, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me out here.
Well, yeah, you bet. Now, I want to start off the program by learning more about the organization you are involved with. What is the Taptil Greenway Association, and what is your mission?
Well, we are an all-volunteer nonprofit that was founded in 1995 with a mission to promote conservation, education, and recreation along the lower Yakima River. One of our initial and still ongoing projects is establishing a hiking, biking, and equestrian trail along the lower Yakima River from Bateman Island up to Benton City. We also help maintain the trails within Chomna and Amon Creek Natural Preserves and in W.E. Johnson Park.
Wow. Now, one of the exciting trail projects the Greenway recently completed is the one that we're exploring today, the Taptil Water Trail. So how was the idea for this trail born?
Well, the seed was planted through interactions with the Washington Water Trails Association, and that was involved with the creation of the Northwest Discovery Water Trail along the Snake and Columbia Rivers as part of the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial Celebration. And we realized that creating a water trail along the lower Yakima River would be a natural complement to the land-based trail we were already working on.
Now, that's great, Dirk. And you know, the river trail is unique in that the trail was already here, right? The Yakima River. So what work did you all need to complete to make the Taptil Water Trail?
Well, the launch sites along the water trail are located on property that are under the jurisdiction of various entities. So our initial effort was to approach and start working with a group of key partner organizations. This included the Army Corps of Engineers, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, Benton County, and the cities of Richland, West Richland, and Benton City.
Okay.
From there, we got a generous grant from REI that funded the work to create, print, and install maps and signs along the water trail. Since then, we have also printed and distributed over 2,000 Taptil Water Trail brochures.
Oh, wow, that's great. And now, Dirk, what makes the Yakima River, what makes a trip down the Yakima River so special? You know, kind of describe the sights and the sounds you experience along the way.
Well, let me start by describing the water trail itself.
Okay.
The water trail from Benton City to Bateman Island is 31 miles long with 10 well-dispersed launch sites. These include 3 paved launch sites, 3 Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife launch sites that require a Discover Pass to use, and 4 more primitive access sites.
Okay.
The trail can roughly be divided into 3 sections. On the upper section from Benton City to Horn Rapids Park, you're heading north, and once leaving Benton City, you're surrounded by open space and parkland.
Oh, wow.
I should mention that immediately below the Horn Rapids boat launch, there's a portage around the Wanawish Dam. The middle section of the river from Snively Road to Hyde Road has the most twists and turns. In this section, you're mostly traveling along a suburban environment and is the best area for bird watching and fall colors. The lower section from Hyde Road to Y Park has the slowest water. This is particularly true below the Dupertail launch, as this section of the river is influenced by the McNary impound on the Columbia River. Pelicans are particularly plentiful along the Yakima, and it's not unusual to spot great blue herons and egrets. And it's also not uncommon to see deer and occasionally coyote along the trail.
Wow, that's amazing. And yeah, since we've been on the river, I've seen quite a few fish jumping out, which is exciting to see. And I believe those are carp, right?
Right. But in addition to carp, there are still salmon runs that go up the Yakima.
Okay. Cool. Now, Dirk, I know the Yakima River is your passion and your group's passion, so no offense, but sometimes I feel like the Yakima River is kind of the forgotten river in town, meaning the mighty Columbia kind of gets all the praise. So I was just hoping you could kind of compare the Columbia and the Yakima rivers for us.
Well, the Yakima is narrow, shallow, and more intimate. You get closer to the surroundings and wildlife with far fewer motorized boats. It twists and turns in ways you won't encounter on the Columbia. So in paddling a few mile stretch of the Yakima, you could be heading north, south, east, and west all in the same journey. And during that journey, you can encounter natural, agricultural, suburban, and urban environments.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great. And now, another thing I wanted to ask you just kind of personally, your group, the Greenway Association, and you in general, you guys put a lot of hard work on weekends, just through the day, maintaining, building these trails. A lot of effort. And then, just the general public comes out and uses them. I was wondering, what enjoyment do you get out of maybe seeing people using the trails you guys work so hard on?
Well, every year we put on a couple paddle events along the Taptail Water Trail. And this past June, we paddled from Benton City to Horn Rapids Park with over 40 participants. So it's always really rewarding to put on an event with that much participation, and especially to meet people that are either new to the area or new to paddling on the Yakima. And we have an upcoming event on August 18th where we will paddle from Hyde Road down here to Y Park. And you can visit the Taptail Greenway Facebook page for event details.
Well, that's great. Well, Dirk, thank you so much for coming on the program and talking with us about the Greenway Association and the Taptail Water Trail. Of course, if you would like more information on the Greenway or the trail, you can visit them at the webpage at the link below. And of course, if you want any information on anything City of Richland related, we strongly encourage you to visit the City of Richland's webpage, which is also listed at the link below. And don't forget, if you're a social media type person, we are where you are. You can find us on all the popular social media platforms. Find the City of Richland on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Well, I'm Mark Ingham. Thanks for joining me on this edition of Explore Richland. Now, Dirk, let's go see if we can find ourselves a coyote.
The main car is headed towards Columbia Center Boulevard.
Dispatch, we're heading southbound on Columbia Center Boulevard. Notify Kennewick.
Dispatch, we're turning into Columbia Center North.
I'm Officer Floor with the Richland Police Department Street Crimes Unit. Are you sure no one's watching? Tri-City law enforcement agencies are working together and cracking down on auto thefts with extra patrols and bait cars. If you steal it, we will find you. Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Explore Richland. I'm your host, Mark Ingham. Well, what a beautiful day here in the city of Richland. The perfect day to get out and explore in our community. Now today we are in North Richland visiting a historical site that you may not know exists unless you happen to work in one of the businesses nearby. That's right, we are north of Hanford High School, north of WSU Tri-Cities, on the corner of Richardson Road and Port of Benton Boulevard at the amazing USS Triton Sail Park. Now this park was dedicated back in 2011, and to talk about the USS Triton and its historical significance and what the Triton was, we are pleased to welcome Marv Keeney to the program. Marv is the Special Projects Coordinator with the Port of Benton. Marv, thanks so much for joining us today. Now, Marv, a lot to talk about, and I have so many questions. I'm so excited to be here. I am so excited to share this park with our viewers. But I'm just going to have to kind of take a breath and start from the beginning. So, Marv, can you start by educating us on what the USS Triton was?
Okay, the USS Triton was the first submarine to circumnavigate the world underwater in 1960. And it's the only, and what you're seeing is the sail, which is the top part of the submarine. This sail's one of the largest sails in the world too, and people think it is the submarine, but it isn't. It's just the top part. It's also the USS Triton was the first U.S. Submarine to have 2 nuclear reactors in it. And it had 2 screws with it too. It was actually a pretty fast ship for its time in 1960.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. And no doubt, this is an amazing piece of American history. I'm just kind of curious how it ties into the history of Richland. The Triton sailed out of Groton, Connecticut, and I don't believe any of the crew members on board were from Richland. So...
Actually, there were some.
Okay, great. Yeah. Great. So why did bringing this to Richland make sense?
Well, how this all started is our commission said we should show something with our partnership with the Navy. And we've had a contract for years to unload spent nuclear reactor cores right over here on this barge slip. Oh, wow. And so one of the commissioners said, Marv, see if you can get us a submarine. And that's not going to happen because they won't even go through the locks. So I called the Navy, I had some contacts, and said, what's your idea? And they said, why don't you get a sail? And at the time I said, what is a sail? And they said, well, come on over to, this is from Bremerton, by the way, and it said, come on over and we'll show you some sail parks in western Washington. So I did, and then we actually saw the USS Triton before. What happens in Bremerton is when they mothball fleets or they discontinue them, they bring them all the way to Bremerton and they scrap metal them, tear them apart and sell the scrap. So we actually got to see the USS Triton before it was dismantled. This is the only thing left of it is the sail. And so that's how it started. We wanted to show our partnership with the Navy, and then we brought this here. We had to cut it up in 6 pieces, and we trucked it on over here. And the conning tower, which I'll show you later, was on a separate truck that we brought over. Brought it all up here. We hired Lamson Crane. They put it all back together, and then we welded it all back together. We put the conning tower in the ground first. Then we put the sail on top of it, and then welded it all back together.
Wow! And so the original reactor engines were disposed of here at Hanford.
Right.
And you mentioned we did actually have some local crewmen or crew ladies, someone local on the ship. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
So we went and tried to get a sail, and when I started trying to get the sail, the Navy said, hey, you might want the USS Triton. It's a very historical submarine. So we put in the paperwork, and all of a sudden they said, well, I'm sorry, I guess it's spoken for. And it was the USS Triton crew members. They have a website, and they have they meet reunion. And so I backed off, and we were looking at some other sail, and then they called me back up and said it fell through. But since the crew knows all about this Triton been here, so we've had crew members from all over the United States come here as one of their goals is to go through the sail and that. And there's, I know of 1 and I think maybe 2 that live in the Tri-Cities.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that served on it.
That's great. So now, Marv, another amazing aspect of the Triton Sail Park is that you can actually enter the Triton Sail, look at the original controls, touch even the periscope.
Right.
Let's go check it out.
As you can notice, it's kind of catacombed in here, and this is the sail. So when the ship submerged, this filled up with water.
Oh, wow.
And so, and then the conning tower's down below, and this hatch here sealed the water off. So this would be all full of water for it to stabilize it, and then we could go down into the conning tower.
Wow, so not only are you underwater, the submarine is actually full of water as well. That sounds pretty
The sail's full of water.
The sail is full of water as well. Well, let's go ahead and lift up this and go down and check out the conning tower.
Our lives and safety in the skilled hands of the men who manipulate the controls. The Triton, like all nuclear submarines, represents one of man's great strides forward in harnessing the fantastic force of atomic power.
Now we have entered the conning tower, which is absolutely amazing and fascinating. Just kind of talk us through some of the gauges, some of the equipment you can see down here.
What you see here is all from 1960.
Wow.
And it was the state of the art. All analog, not digital. There was 2 periscopes here. There was one over here that came up, and they would look at that and you could see long distances. And this periscope would come up, it's called an attack periscope. It's very, very clear and very precise to see. It goes out about 3 to 4 miles.
Wow.
And so this is the pilot's seat.
Okay.
And you see there's no window.
No windows.
They would open this door up when they were going, and usually they'd yell back and forth to one another from the ship down below. There is another control room right like this down below. Okay. So they had 2 control rooms.
Okay.
And so what they could do is seal themselves off from the ship and control the whole ship from up here.
And now this room, obviously the ship was about, I think just under 500 feet long when it was
about 600, yeah.
About 600 feet total. Yeah. This room, pretty small to me. So how many men, women were in here working?
About 4 people could be a navigator, captain, like here's a plotter. So that's about all they could have in here. There wasn't much room because when you put the other periscope in here, you can see how narrow it is.
And now, Marv, I'd like to think, my pride would like to say that I'm getting some special treatment here, that you guys just unlocked the sale for me, my show, but that's not the case.
No.
The public is invited to take a tour of the Triton sail. So how can people make that happen?
Yeah, since 2011 when we started this, we've given multiple tours. And how you do that is just call the Port of Benton, 375-3060, ask that you'd like a tour, and we'll try to accommodate whenever we can.
Well, that's amazing.
Now, I might mention, so I forget this, there's other sail parks in the United States. This is the only sail in the United States that has a conning tower and a working periscope inside of it.
Wow. That's great. And I know we've said it, and maybe people already are going to just know this, but I mean, for me, it's just fascinating to know that this is all original stuff. This isn't like a remake of the Triton. I mean, this is it,
This is the real equipment that was in 1960.
Well, it's just amazing. And, during the tour, you really get the feeling that you're part of this, you're part of the crew, which for me isn't a good feeling because I'm claustrophobic, and this is kind of a little too small for me. No windows, you're underwater. But I mean, thanks so much for showing us around the USS Triton Sail Park. I had a great time, and I strongly encourage anybody watching this program, go ahead, go visit the Port of Benton's webpage, learn about the sail, and schedule yourself a tour because it's truly fascinating. Now, if you have any more questions regarding anything going on in the city of Richland, I strongly encourage you to visit the City of Richland's webpage at the link below. And of course, if you're not following the City of Richland on all of our social media platforms, I encourage you to log on and give us a like on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. We're always sharing tons of important information on our social media platforms.
Well, Mark, this isn't the end of the tour. We have one more place I want to show you.
Oh, let's go check it out. Well, Marv, you weren't kidding about one more stop to show us. Holy cow, this is amazing. Now, not only am I claustrophobic, but I'm also deathly afraid of heights. Well, thanks for joining me on this edition of Explore Richland. We'll see you next time.
Beginning in March, residents will see some minor changes to their City of Richland utility bills. The bills will now be produced in color, which will assist with readability and in identifying important messages. The format of late notices will be upgraded to a full page on white paper with red ink. If you have questions regarding your utility bill, email customer service, call 942-1104, or visit the City of Richland's website at /myutility.
Hello, I'm Officer Eric Edwards with the Richland Police Department, and new distracted driving laws are now in effect. Over 26% of vehicle crashes involve phone distraction, and you are 3 times more likely to be involved in a collision when talking on the phone. Handheld cell phone and any other electronic device use is no longer allowed while driving, even while stopped in traffic or at a traffic light. This includes text messaging, looking up information, taking pictures, or any other handheld use. Hands-free uses, or uses that start with a single touch or swipe are allowed. Officers will be enforcing these new laws. The first violation will be a fine of $136 and will be included on your driver's record. Please put your phone away while driving, but if you must use it, park first, away from the flow of traffic. Remember, nothing on your electronic device is worth that kind of risk. Be safe.
Welcome to City Corner, an ongoing program where we talk about what's happening in our city. Hello, I'm Gail Everett. The underlying goal of the Benton County Emergency Management and the 911 Dispatch Center is to ensure that in times of emergency, citizens receive timely, responsive, and accurate services. While not a department of the City of Richland, the city serves as the administrating agency for the Benton County Emergency Management. Joining us today to talk about these services is Deanna Davis, BCEM Emergency Management Manager. Hello, Deanna.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Well, I have a big question for you. Can you tell me what Benton County Emergency Services is all about?
So Benton County Emergency Services is two divisions, Benton County Emergency Management and Southeast Communication Center. The Southeast Communication Center provides 911 services for all of Benton and Franklin counties, and Benton County Emergency Management provides emergency management services for Benton County only.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we recently received nationwide 911 call outage information. It came on our emails and our cell phones. Can you explain the system that was used to notify residents?
Right, so on December 27th, there was a statewide 911 outage. Because we have such a close working relationship with our 911 center, with Southeast Communications, we received notification of that outage and were requested to put out some information to the public to ensure that those folks within our area knew what number to call when you can't use 911. What number should we call? We use a couple of systems that we have at our disposal. One is called Code Red, and it is an emergency telephone notification system. And we also use the emergency alert system, which would have activated our broadcasters, radio stations, and cable crawls across TVs to provide information to the public about the 7-digit phone number, the non-emergency line that was not affected by this outage, so that folks still had an avenue to get to 911 services.
I see. So how would one sign up for Code Red?
So that's a great question. So Code Red is an opt-in service, and you can get to the opt-in page on our website, so www.bces.wa.gov. It is a free service for all Benton and Franklin County residents, actually, and you would sign up via the web page from your respective emergency management agency. So you'll sign up through our web page, click on the Code Red link, input your information, and you are now registered for Code Red. When you're signing up, you can sign up based upon your address. So it's a geographic system. So sign up based upon your address, your phone number, email, or text messaging. Those are some of the varying ways that you can get these messages. And you can sign up for more than one phone number or more than one address. So you'll sign up for places that are important to you, your home address, your children's school, your parents' address, your children's address. Anything that's important to you, you can sign up with those geographic locations in Code Red. If something happens that's affecting that specific geographic area, you'll be notified by the method that you choose, either a cell phone call, landline call, an email, or a text message.
So you put that information in.
You put that information in.
And it's not an app. You have to go to your website and download it that way.
Correct. There is a Code Red app. However, it is different. So the Code Red app that you'll see in the App Store is different than the Code Red sign up that you'll do through our web page.
Good to know.
So we encourage all residents to sign up through the web page. That's the one true way to ensure that you are in our database.
Okay, well, how does it affect the Hanford site emergencies?
So the Hanford site emergencies are a specific program that we do emergency planning for within Benton County Emergency Management. We would also use the same tool to provide emergency instructions to those residents who live within a prescribed emergency planning zone. So something very specific to understand is we have two technological hazards that we do a great deal of pre-planning for. That is the Columbia Generating Station's operating nuclear power plant and the Department of Energy's Hanford site. So while Columbia Generating Stations, Energy Northwest, sits on the Hanford site, it is not part of the Hanford site.
Okay.
So we do specific planning for those types of emergencies for a very specific segment of the population. It's about 10 miles from the center of the nuclear power plant.
Okay, so how would they be notified and what would they be told during this notification process?
So how they would be notified is a number of different ways. First and foremost is there are a number of outdoor warning sirens that are stretched throughout the community along the Columbia River and then some in the interiors of the Richland area for those areas that are affected. So those sirens would provide a 3-minute audible sound followed by a message instructing them on what they should do. Primarily at that point, that's the alert part of it. We're looking for folks to go back inside to listen to the radio for further instructions. We would also use our Code Red system, which would then dial their phones, provide them email, and provide them very specific instructions on what they specifically need to do to keep themselves safe, as well as using the emergency alert system message.
Okay, and that's really good information to know. Now, how do our children be notified at the schools?
Right. So the Richland School District actually does not have any schools which are located within the emergency planning zone for these very specific hazards for the Hanford site or for Energy Northwest. However, because we know that there are school children who have the potential to go to school in Richland School Districts who would live in an area that may have to take some protective actions, we notify the Richland School District that something has happened, and then they notify the appropriate parents of those school children who may live in an affected area. That way they're not being sent home to an area that's been evacuated.
Okay. So how are the locations identified for evacuations?
So areas identified for evacuations for our very specific hazard programs like Energy Northwest or the Hanford site are done with just that pre-planning using the 10-mile emergency planning zone, or for the Hanford site, a given distance away from the threat area. And so those are already outlined and designed, and we have pre-planned actions for them. As a matter of fact, anybody who lives within that area is mailed what they call a Hanford Site Neighbors Calendar. This is the one for 2019. They are mailed this calendar to their home, and this gives them all of the emergency instructions and information that they would need to know for being part of an emergency planning zone for those areas.
And those are for the areas that could be affected. That's closest to.
Right. Primarily the most populated or densely populated area within the city of Richland that is affected would be the Horn Rapids Master Plan community. So if we have residents who are watching this who have not received a calendar of this nature and live within the Horn Rapids area, please give our office a call and we will make sure that you get one.
Well, it kind of looks historic too. Is that like a pretty calendar too?
It is. Every year it changes. This year it was historic pictures from around our area, done in a sepia tone, so it's very nice.
That is nice. So you only have enough printed probably for the segmented population. So I live in Kennewick. I can't get one of those calendars.
No, they're not specific for areas of Kennewick because the information that's contained in here is very specific to the area that those people live in.
Okay, that's
providing
very cool.
them specific emergency instructions and information.
Wow, that's a great idea too. Okay, so how do all of our communities work together when an emergency does happen?
That's a really great question. So all of our responders, all of our communities work exceptionally well together. At Mile, everyone has one central location to respond to direct and control the emergency from that area so that we're not having to rely on using cell phones or email or other means of communication. We're all in one room directing.
And you're getting the same message.
Absolutely, yeah, that's key.
Yes, that sounds great. Okay, what other emergency-related services does BCES provide other than Hanford notifications?
So, as I spoke of, Code Red, that's probably the most important piece of information that the public can take away is signing up for this system.
Okay. And
we
can all sign up.
Absolutely.
Kennewick, Pasco, Richland.
Absolutely. All of Benton County and actually all of Franklin County.
Okay.
You'll sign up through your respective emergency management agency. But that is the best way that we have to reach the public in the event of an emergency. And it's very specific. While emergency alert system messaging is broad-based and it can reach all of Benton County, it's not specific. It's not specific to a given location, where Code Red is geographically based, so it is very specific to a targeted area. We can use this to provide emergency information and instructions on actions the public needs to do to keep themselves safe. We've used it very recently this summer with wildland fires. So it provides us a mechanism to reach the people who are in an area that may be in immediate danger and let them know that they need to leave their home. So it gives us the avenue to reach a very large number of people within a very, very short amount of time.
Okay, and this is different than like the Amber Alerts that go on everybody's phone that is very loud and right? It's different.
It is. It's different, but it's very similar as well. So that you mentioned Amber Alert. Through our Code Red program, we also have the ability to turn on people's cell phones. So you had mentioned people were notified with a 911 outage, December 27th. So there may have been people who received a notification on their cell phone who had never signed up for Code Red and were wondering, how on earth did they know to turn my phone on? Well, we use a component of that called a wireless emergency alert. And through that component of wireless emergency alerting, we can actually activate people's cell phones within a triangulated area. So again, using the geographic nature of Code Red. However, it's not 100% foolproof. The only surefire way to ensure that you are in our database is to sign up through our website.
Okay. Now talk about the training and preparation schedule for staff and how BCES prepares for emergencies.
So the best way that we have to prepare for emergencies is to practice our plans and procedures. Okay. So part of what we do at our office is we write plans, we coordinate with other agencies to determine a given action in an emergency. And so in order for us to ensure that those actions are actually going to work, we play, we pretend. We have, on an annual basis, at least every quarter, we practice with Columbia Generating Station